There is something almost magical about the bond between siblings in the beginning. Before life complicates everything, before responsibilities stack up, before personalities harden, siblings exist in their purest form. They share the same air, the same rooms, the same jokes, the same boredom, the same childhood world. They wake up together, explore together, learn together, and grow side by side. In those early years, it feels impossible to imagine a future where they drift apart, yet they do. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but quietly and naturally. The same people who once felt inseparable become adults who barely speak or only think of each other in passing. And when it happens, people wonder, how do two people who shared an entire childhood end up living like strangers? The first truth psychology reveals is that siblings, despite growing up in what seems like the same environment, do not share the same childhood at all. They live under the same roof, but they inhabit different emotional worlds. They receive different versions of the same parents. The first child receives a set of parents who are younger, less experienced, often more anxious, and deeply focused on doing everything right. The second child receives a relaxed but more distracted version of those same parents. The third child may receive parents who are overwhelmed, tired, or emotionally distant. Birth order alone shapes personality more than most people realize. The oldest often learns responsibility early. The youngest often learns charm and adaptability. The middle child often learns independence or emotional invisibility. And even if the household structure remains the same, the emotional climate changes from year to year. A sibling who grows up during a financially stable period has a different childhood than one who grows up during financial stress. A sibling who grows up when the marriage between the parents is strong has a different home life than one who grows up during conflict. One sibling may feel nurtured, another may feel criticized. One may experience affection, another may experience pressure. These differences build the foundation of how siblings see themselves and how they see each other. Inside the home, siblings adopt roles they never chose, roles often assigned subtly by the environment. One becomes the responsible one, the obedient one, the achiever. Another becomes the free spirit, the troublemaker, the funny one, the sensitive one, or the forgotten one. These roles are reinforced daily through small interactions. They shape self-esteem, coping mechanisms, and emotional identities. And by the time siblings reach adolescence, those identities feel set in stone. The problem is, these roles often survive long into adulthood, even when the individuals outgrow them. An adult who built their life around becoming responsible may feel hardened or burdened when they are around a sibling who stayed carefree. A sibling who learned to be quiet and accommodating may still feel overshadowed by a louder, more dominant brother or sister. When siblings return home for holidays or family gatherings, they often feel themselves slipping back into versions of themselves they no longer identify with. They regress emotionally. They feel like teenagers again. This emotional whiplash, reverting to a past identity the moment you walk into a family gathering, can make sibling relationships feel draining, unfamiliar, or emotionally suffocating. Distance becomes easier than reliving old versions of oneself. As people grow older, something else happens. Their lives diverge. Childhood forces siblings to live parallel lives, but adulthood lets people choose their own path. And few things create more distance than the natural unfolding of individual identity. One sibling may pursue academic success while another values creativity. One might prioritize marriage and children, while another delays or avoids it entirely. One may travel the world while another builds a stable home. One may rise in their career while the other struggles. One may remain deeply connected to family, while another prioritizes independence. These choices, made slowly over time, pull siblings in different emotional directions. They begin building routines that no longer overlap. Their days are filled with different activities, different goals, different stresses, and different sources of joy. And without shared routines, the relationship loses its natural momentum. Psychologists call this life course divergence, and it affects sibling closeness more than almost any other factor. It is not conflict that pulls siblings apart, it is difference. When siblings enter adulthood, they begin making decisions influenced by their personal values. These values can shift dramatically from one sibling to another, even if they grew up in the same home. One sibling may become highly ambitious, believing success is the ultimate measure of life. Another may value emotional fulfillment over achievement. One may become financially cautious, another financially carefree. These values shape how they make decisions, how they handle conflict, how they spend time, and how they connect with others. When values diverge enough, conversation becomes harder. Siblings are unsure what to talk about. They avoid certain topics to prevent tension. They feel judged, or they fear being judged. They interpret each other's choices through their own worldview, assuming the other should think the same way. And without realizing it, the emotional distance widens. Competition is another subtle but powerful psychological factor that causes siblings to drift. Sibling competition often begins unintentionally through parental comparison, even when parents try to avoid it. Children quickly notice who gets praised more, who gets blamed less, who gets privileges, who gets affection, and who gets lectured. These patterns quietly shape a sibling's internal world. A child who feels inferior may spend adulthood trying to compensate or trying to avoid reminders of that inferiority. A child who feels superior may not notice that their confidence came at a cost to their sibling's self-esteem. Comparison continues into adulthood. Who is more successful? Who is happier? Who married earlier? Who earns more? Whose children are doing better? Who owns a home? Who maintains a stable life? Even when siblings love each other deeply, comparison can feel painful. Many adults distance themselves from siblings not because of dislike, but because interactions with them trigger old wounds of inadequacy, shame, resentment, or unresolved rivalry. Avoiding these feelings becomes easier than confronting them. Communication style differences magnify the divide. Some siblings remain naturally expressive, comfortable sharing their emotions and reaching out frequently. Others grow into reserved adults who prefer privacy, space, and minimal interaction. One sibling may crave connection and interpret silence as rejection. Another may value independence and interpret frequent contact as pressure. These mismatches create misunderstandings. One sibling quietly waits for the other to initiate conversations. The other believes communication will happen when it happens. Both assume the other doesn't care enough. And year by year, the communication becomes less frequent until the relationship feels unfamiliar and distant. Life transitions accelerate the drift even more. Adulthood brings milestones that reshape emotional availability. Career changes, marriages, divorces, financial stress, parenting, health struggles, grief, relocations, and emotional burnout. Each transition takes time and energy. A sibling who becomes a parent may suddenly disappear from social life for years because of the overwhelming demands of raising children. A sibling consumed by career responsibilities may withdraw to focus on work. A sibling experiencing depression or anxiety may retreat emotionally, making communication inconsistent. And a sibling facing life crises may become difficult to reach, not out of neglect, but out of emotional exhaustion. These transitions create temporary or permanent gaps. Some siblings reconnect after periods of distance, others do not. The relationship shapeshifts based on capacity, not intention. Family trauma is one of the most significant forces behind sibling estrangement. When siblings grow up in a dysfunctional household, one filled with conflict, neglect, emotional inconsistency, or instability, each sibling develops their own survival strategy. One may become perfectionistic as a way to gain control. Another may become rebellious as a form of protest. Another may become emotionally detached as a shield. Even though they grew up under the same roof, they lived different emotional realities. And as adults, these coping strategies shape how they connect or disconnect from others. When siblings have different interpretations of the past, conflict becomes almost inevitable. One sibling may insist the childhood was painful, another may deny it. One sibling may seek healing and conversation, another may avoid anything that brings discomfort. One may blame the parents, another may defend them. Because trauma binds siblings together in one moment and separates them in the next, the gap between their emotional experiences becomes difficult to bridge. Even if siblings want to love each other, unresolved trauma creates invisible walls. Boundaries, a word many people never used growing up, become crucial in adulthood. As people mature, they become more aware of what they can handle emotionally and what drains them. Some siblings develop strong boundaries to protect their mental health. They distance themselves from family members who trigger stress, anxiety, guilt, or old insecurities. If a sibling has difficult behaviors, controlling tendencies, emotional volatility, passive-aggressive habits, or dismissive attitudes, the other sibling may reduce contact simply to maintain peace. This distance is not always rejection. It is self-preservation. And while boundaries can protect emotional well-being, they also change the rhythm of family connection. Siblings who once shared everything may end up sharing almost nothing because the relationship became too heavy or too complicated to sustain regularly. As years pass, something unexpected happens. Siblings often become symbols of a past the adult no longer identifies with. When a person outgrows their childhood self, they may feel uncomfortable around those who only knew them as that older version. A sibling becomes a reminder of who they used to be, not who they are now. This emotional mismatch creates distance even when there is love. A sibling who reinvented themselves may prefer relationships that reflect their new identity. Meanwhile, their old relationships remain frozen in a different time. Some people distance themselves to protect their sense of self. Others distance themselves because reconnecting requires confronting emotional truths they are not ready to face. Geography, although practical, also contributes deeply to emotional separation. When siblings live far apart, the opportunities for spontaneous connection disappear. They cannot casually drop by, share meals, or celebrate small events together. Instead, life becomes scheduled, intentional, and limited. And as months stretch into years, the emotional closeness fades simply because physical proximity no longer supports it. Even if siblings care for each other, the rhythm of connection slows down. Distance does not create hostility. It simply creates silence. And silence, when stretched long enough, becomes normal. What makes sibling drift particularly painful is the expectation that siblings should remain close. Society reinforces the belief that family is forever, that siblings should be best friends, that blood guarantees connection. When reality contradicts that expectation, people feel guilt, shame, or confusion. They assume they are failing. They assume something is wrong with them or with the family. But psychology reveals that sibling distance is far more common than sibling closeness in adulthood. Life simply has too many moving parts, too many emotional demands, too many diverging paths for most siblings to maintain the intense closeness they had as children. The distance is not a sign of brokenness. It is a sign of growth. Still, even distant siblings often carry emotional memory, a quiet tenderness beneath the silence. They may not speak often, but they think of each other during significant moments. They remember old jokes, childhood experiences, and shared hardships. They carry emotional imprints of each other that do not fade. The relationship may not be active, but the memory of the bond remains. Sometimes, a crisis brings siblings back together. Sometimes maturity softens old conflicts. Sometimes distance heals wounds that proximity once kept open. Sometimes siblings reconnect after decades and find a deeper, calmer, healthier connection than the childhood one ever was. Understanding why siblings grow apart helps people release guilt, resentment, and confusion. It shifts the perspective from "we failed" to "we changed." It shows that relationships evolve the same way people evolve. Growing apart does not mean the love disappeared. It means life stretched the bond in ways no one anticipated. And sometimes, distance is simply the shape the relationship needs to take to remain gentle instead of painful. Siblings growing apart is one of the most human experiences in adulthood. It is not dramatic. It is not sudden. It is not catastrophic. It is quiet, gradual, and natural. But it is also emotional, because losing closeness with someone who once knew your entire world creates an ache that words rarely capture. Yet, in that ache lies understanding. Siblings do not grow apart because they stop caring. They grow apart because life, identity, trauma, roles, choices, and time slowly reshape the emotional landscape between them. And recognizing that truth brings peace. It reminds us that bonds can fade without failing, and distance can exist without hostility. It reminds us that love can be quiet, subtle, and hidden beneath years of silence. And it reminds us that the story between siblings never truly ends. It simply changes chapters.